The jagged edge of the energy blade pressed so firmly against Kale's throat that he could feel the low-frequency hum vibrating in his own vertebrae. One twitch and his carotid would be a memory. But the medic didn't pull away. Instead, he leaned forward, his hands steady as they worked within the ruins of the warrior's thigh. The blood on his fingers was a deep, impossible violet, thick and hot enough to stain the silver metallic soil beneath them. In a galaxy of cold equations, she was the only variable that didn't want him dead, even if she currently looked like she might change her mind. The copper grass doesn't just cut, it listens for the sound of a heartbeat it doesn't recognize. On Xylos 4, the flora was as predatory as the politics. Cal could hear the stalks whistling around them, while sensing the change in the air as the sky bruised into a sickly electric green. The ambush had been efficient. One moment his reconnaissance unit was joking about the local rations. The next, they were carbon scoring on a hillside. He was the only one who had scrambled into the ravine, and that was where he'd found her. She was a masterpiece of biological warfare, and he was just a guy with a stapler and a bad sense of timing. Varric's eyes, gold and slitted like a predator's, tracked his every move with a mixture of agony and pure, undiluted hate. Her Siren armor was shattered, the obsidian plates cracked open to reveal the vulnerable, pale flesh underneath. Cale clicked his tongue, a nervous habit he couldn't shake even when staring at his own executioner. "Keep it together, Kyle. Just a little more pressure," he muttered to himself. He ignored the blade. He focused on the way her breathing hitched when he applied the clotting foam. It was a jagged, desperate sound. Every time their skin met, his calloused, human hands against her sleek, feverish skin, an electric spark seemed to jump between them. It wasn't the tech. It was the friction of two worlds colliding in a ditch. They weren't just crossing enemy lines. They were erasing them with every drop of shared blood. Suddenly, the wind changed. The metallic whistle of the grass turned into a high-pitched scream. The ion blight was rolling in, a storm that would strip the electronics from his suit and the marrow from his bones if they stayed in the open. "We have to move," Cal said, his voice cracking. He finally looked up, meeting that golden gaze. "If we stay, the storm finishes what your interceptor started." Ivaric's hand trembled. The blade dipped, tracing a thin red line across his skin before she finally let the weapon clatter into the dirt. She didn't have the strength to hold it anymore. Her head fell back against the wreckage, her chest heaving. Ironically, the warrior who was bred to conquer him was now entirely dependent on the man she was supposed to destroy. Cal didn't hesitate. He hooked her uninjured arm over his shoulder, the weight of her nearly collapsing his knees. Her scent was something sharp, like burnt citrus and rain. He could feel the frantic thrum of her heart through her ribs, a rhythm that felt disturbingly similar to his own. He began to haul her toward the ridge, toward the silhouette of an old bunker. Every step through the razor grass felt like a price paid in skin, but he didn't let go. He couldn't. The roar of the descent thrusters drowned out the screaming wind, but it couldn't drown out the silence between them as they stood in the center of the clearing. Two fleets, one gleaming chrome and the other jagged obsidian, hung in the atmosphere like predatory birds waiting for a signal to strike. Kyle felt the barrel of a railgun tracking his heart from the human dropship, while a Siren sniper's laser painted a crimson dot on Varric's forehead. It turned out that survival was a louder signal than any distress flare. Only hours before, they had been huddled in the belly of the bunker. Varric's fingers, trembling from the fever of her infection, had danced across the ancient terminal keys. She didn't speak his language, but she understood the logic of the old machines. As her blood stained the console, she had looked at him, not as a target, but as an anchor. The trek across the razor-grass basin had nearly broken them both. The hunter-killer drones had been a constant, high-pitched whine in the distance, a reminder that their own people were looking for them, though not necessarily to save them. The tower hummed with a frantic energy as the dual signals punched through the atmosphere. Now, facing their commanders, the cost of their journey was laid bare. "Put the alien down, medic!" His captain's voice boomed over the external speakers. "This is not a rescue mission for the enemy." On the other side, a Syrian officer, Varek's own mother, though the resemblance was hidden behind a mask of cold duty, leveled a pulse rifle. The command was silent, delivered through a flickering hologram, but the intent was clear: execute the human or die with him. Varek didn't move. In fact, she leaned harder into Kale's side. Her hand, still stained with that vivid violet, gripped his tactical vest so tightly her knuckles went white. Cal didn't reach for his sidearm. Instead, he wrapped his arm around her waist, physically hoisting her up so she could stand tall against the wind. They stood there, a mess of bandages and bruised pride, refusing to release their grip. It was a moment of sheer, quiet defiance that seemed to stretch into eternity. The air was thick with the smell of scorched metal and the static of 100 weapons locks. But the Syrian commander saw the way her daughter was breathing. She saw the human's unorthodox care, the way the bandages were wrapped with a precision that had nothing to do with military protocol and everything to do with mercy. Ironically, the ceasefire didn't come from a treaty. It came from the sight of two people who had forgotten they were supposed to be monsters. The transfer was quick and tense. Varek was allowed to board the human vessel, a concession made in the name of medical necessity, though everyone knew it was a stay of execution. As the ship broke orbit, the vibration of the engines became a low, comforting throb in the deck plates. Cal sat on the edge of a supply crate in the med bay, his head in his hands. He expected a court-martial. He expected a cell. But when the door slid open, he only saw Varek. She refused the sterile comfort of the bunk, limping toward him instead. She sat on the cold floor at his feet, her shoulder brushing his knee. The truth is, neither of them knew where they were going, but as her hand found his in the quiet hum of the stars, the distance between their worlds didn't seem so vast anymore.